the ordinary meeting of the Council on the 25th of August 2020, held via remote technology. I now hand over to the Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Rosemary Dillon.
Thank you, Storm. Good evening, councillors and staff. Welcome to this ordinary meeting of the Blue Mountain City Council. This meeting is being recorded and will be live streamed. An audio file and a link to a live stream is available from the Council's website. The audio recording will be available on the Council's website for 6 months after the upload date. As all statements made at this meeting will be recorded, your image and voice may be recognised and other people may be aware that you have attended the meeting. Your continued attendance at the meeting after this statement is made is taken as your consent to your image and voice being webcast. All persons in attendance at this meeting, whether addressing the Council or making comments that may be detected by the recording equipment, should refrain from making any defamatory comments or from releasing any personal or confidential information about another individual without that other individual's consent. The Council is not responsible for the statements of any individual made during this meeting. Any defamatory statements or any statements which include personal or confidential information are the sole responsibility of the individual who makes them. The Council's Code of Meeting Practice sets standards of conduct for a Council meeting. If any person in attendance at the meeting acts in a disorderly manner, or if a person makes defamatory or unacceptable comments, then the meeting may be interrupted by the Mayor or by me, Chief Executive Officer, and appropriate action taken. This meeting must not be recorded by any party other than the Council, and members of the public have been invited to provide submissions to items on the meeting agenda in advance, and any submissions received have been provided to the councillors. And now ask you to please welcome the Mayor.
Dear God, we sincerely seek your blessing on this council so that its deliberations may advance your glory and the true welfare of the people of the City of Blue Mountains. The City of Blue Mountains is located within the country of the Darug and Ngunnawurrung peoples. Blue Mountain City Council recognises that Darug and Ngunnawurrung traditional owners have a continuous and deep connection to their country, and that this is of great cultural significance to Aboriginal people, both locally and in the region. For Darug and Ngunnawurrung people, Ungara takes in everything within the physical, cultural and spiritual landscape: landforms, water, air, trees, rocks, plants, animals, foods, medicines, minerals, stories and special places. It includes cultural practice, kinship, knowledge, songs, stories and art, as well as spiritual beings and people, past, present and future. Blue Mountain City Council pays respect to elders past and present while recognising the strength, capacity and resilience of past and present Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the Blue Mountains region. Can I just get a bit of technical advice? Is this, CEO, is this Venetian behind me strobing at all? It is on my screen. No? Okay, thank you. Are there any apologies? There are none. Confirmation of the minutes held on the 28th of July 2020. They've been circulated. To move, Councillor Vanderklay, seconded Councillor Fells. A true record. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. I will sign accordingly. I'll deal with mayoral matters of urgency and then mayoral minutes before taking exclusions. And that brings me to mayoral matter of urgency number 1. I move that, and it's seconded by the Deputy Mayor. I have a procedural motion. Councillor Fell, yes?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to move a procedural motion that the Mayor be heard with no time limit on this matter.
Seconded, Councillor Hollywood. I'll put that matter. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried with Councillor Brown against. Thank you, Councillor Brown. All right, as I've moved, I'll enter the debate. Councillors, I refer tonight to the report by the Ombudsman that was handed down on the 21st of August 2020 in speaking to my mayoral minute. And I think there are a number of points that I need to focus on. The Ombudsman looked at a cross-section of notices issued by SafeWork New South Wales and found that they were issued either unlawfully or unreasonably. Now, it's been said by some that this only relates to a proportion of the notices issued. That is not so. The Ombudsman did not leave 37 notices intact, nor uphold those other notices in any way. Rather, as the report makes clear on page 1, the Ombudsman ultimately focused on 4 key sites and found that each of the statutory notices issued that were referred to in the complaint in respect of those 4 sites were either unlawful or unreasonable. Those who feel moved to say, quote, "Oh, it was only some sites," unquote, do not acknowledge or may not understand the substance of the Ombudsman's report. The action taken by SafeWork against the Council over an extended period has been found by the Ombudsman to be disproportionate and inconsistent with SafeWork's approach to other similar organisations. The report points to interference by senior officers of SafeWork in the day-to-day performance by SafeWork officers of their duties. Those who say, "Oh, it's only some sites," fail to acknowledge the impact on the community, the council and its staff of the unlawful and inappropriate conduct disclosed in the Ombudsman's report. If such a dismissal were to come from a member of the governing body of this council, it would, in my view, be an extraordinary omission. To those who say, despite the shocking findings in the report, things are better and safer now, I'd say this: that attitude is wrong. Look at page 78 of the Ombudsman's report, where it says, and I quote the Ombudsman directly, quote, "If the cooperative and constructive engagement that prevailed in the period from May 2017 to November 2017 had continued, the outcome of the events of 2017-18 could have been very different to the actual outcomes. It is, however, important to note that even after November 2017, Blue Mountain City Council continued to be diligent in working cooperatively with SafeWork staff," unquote. That cooperative and constructive approach, so described by the Ombudsman, was in place prior to the broadcasts and was proceeding up until the politics began. And it was heading in the direction we now find ourselves in any way, in any event. We did not need the politics, the massive costs, and the damage done. The report speaks for itself. It is a very powerful document that records very strong findings. Searingly, the comments from the SafeWork inspectors themselves are alarming. They speak generally, not specifically, but generally across the whole sequence of events during the period of a campaign that was not so much about safety, as they describe it, but about other factors. I've always said there were issues at this council. Indeed, I was the one who called the first investigations via mayoral minute. Not Minister Matt Keane, and not Minister Upton, me. And those issues are put in context by the Ombudsman's report, which says throughout the BMCC is no different to other councils. There were issues here around the form of registers and the like, matters that needed to be addressed and which were uncovered by the investigations I initiated and you supported. Issues that have been addressed by the reform process that sprung from our actions and were led by our staff, and I acknowledge our CEO in particular. When the persons quoted in the report said we were no different to other comparable organisations, perhaps the whole sector has work to do. Perhaps we are now better positioned to be leaders in that. But that does not hide the fact that the Blue Mountain City Council has been the victim of a politically motivated and prolonged attack in which the state safety regulator was weaponised for political ends. Frankly, those who played a part should have the decency to consider their conduct and, in my view, resign. The community should be able to have faith that the state safety regulator will not be politicised. They also need to have faith that elected persons will wait for and respect evidence over assertion. I feel for the staff of SafeWork. They should not have been put in the awful position described by many of them in the Ombudsman's report. And I feel for all the BMCC staff and their families impacted by the actions of SafeWork. Actions now shown to be in part unlawful, unreasonable, disproportionate and inconsistent. As the Ombudsman states in the introduction to the report, and I quote him, employers, workers and the community need to be able to place their trust in a regulator to act lawfully and reasonably and to provide certainty and consistency in enforcement, end quote. All of these matters need to be seen in the light of other allegations made and the results of the evidence-based findings of the public inquiry into those allegations that are contained in the 3 interim reports issued to date. That there was a conflict of interest between Messrs Toomer and Mulligan. The Commissioner finds that this was not true. That there were a series of events described as jobs for the boys, where mates were giving other mates jobs at the council. The Commissioner finds that this was not true. That the CEO was inappropriately appointed. The Commissioner finds that this was not true. That the CEO said things under oath that were factually inaccurate. The Commissioner finds that this was not true. And now we have the Ombudsman pull a cross-section of notices issued by SafeWork in the period and finds them to be either unreasonable or unlawful. This whole term of council has been consumed by this. These false allegations have hung over the heads of this city as we've confronted bushfires and COVID-19. In concluding, let me speak to the staff, past and present, and their families who've been impacted. To the frontline workers whose time at work has been stressed by this and by the politics of it, I acknowledge you and I recognise how hard that must have been. And I publicly state it. To the management team members who were pilloried on talkback radio based on incorrect allegations that were provided to commentators, I know how that feels. And I reach out to you and I acknowledge you. To those whose careers, whose health and whose families were impacted by this, especially those who suffered false allegations and public humiliation, I reach out to you, I reach out to your families, and I hope this report helps in some way. Councillors, allegations do not become facts without evidence. As public officials, we should have the patience to seek and respect the evidence. Asbestos is a 20th century disaster that has caused so much pain. It too ought to be above politics and not be manipulated in order to remove a democratically elected local government. Such conduct is beyond disappointing. I'd like to thank the community of the City of Blue Mountains for standing by us throughout. Does the seconder wish to speak? And we're back to timing now.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Just very, very quickly, I agree with everything that you have just said. And I personally want to thank the staff at Council, our CEO, and pay my deepest respect to every staff member who has been impacted in some way or other. They shouldn't have had to go through with what they had, what was said about them. It was just absolutely terrible. So I just want to thank them for standing by the council, standing by us, and we stood with them all the way through this whole process. And this report vindicates our stand. So on behalf of myself, thank you very much, CEO and staff.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Fell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks very much. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. And at this point, I'll add my thanks to you for your leadership, and my thanks to the staff in particular, and particularly the leadership of the CEO, but all staff, I think, pretty much, not quite all, have really done a great job in seeing us through this. Now, first of all, let me say, I really welcome this report. It's a fantastic report. As you said, it's extremely important regarding aspects of Safe Works actions. But the real import of the report, I think, is less about asbestos and more about a spectacularly inept, ambition-driven attempt to bring down a democratically elected council. In 2017, our previous general manager alerted council to concerns regarding asbestos in the area, in council-owned facilities, and recommended a strategic plan to address these and to meet the future challenges represented by, as you've correctly identified it, the awful legacy of widespread asbestos use throughout New South Wales and indeed Australia in the 20th century. The majority of us endorsed Mr. Greenwood's strategic approach, committed to seeing it implemented. But a minority, on the other hand, sensed an opportunity too good to resist to overthrow the elected body and to advance their own standing in the local and or state political sphere. Their strategy was clearly to throw mud in all directions at all aspects of council's asbestos response, make the cost of mounting a defence so high that, as in some defamation cases, the victim is forced from the field by the sheer mounting costs of defending themselves and leaving the false accusers to claim victory. So we've seen allegations of inappropriate, inadequate action to address the asbestos issue, allegations of inappropriate processes used to select key staff, and even allegations that leading professionals in the field of asbestos management have behaved in a potentially corrupt manner. And this important report, this Ombudsman's report, blows the lid on one aspect of this vicious campaign and reveals a spectacular own goal. You've already mentioned that some seek to belittle the importance of the report, saying that only a small number of instances of notices being issued were examined by the Ombudsman, a selection, as you say. Having selected those, he didn't endorse or leave intact the rest of them by some crazy process of omission. It'd be like saying that if you took the first 100 cans of fish in a shipment of 1,000 and they were found to contain botulism, that's a ringing endorsement of the quality of the remaining 900. It's absolute rubbish. In 100% of the notices examined by the Ombudsman, he finds inappropriate levels of dictation by senior staff at the political level, inappropriate regard being given to the diktats of radio broadcasters, to the extent that it appeared that senior politicians were in fact being directed and implicitly threatened by broadcasters. The response of these politicians threatened the very existence of the council with suspension, oh, there was suspicion, and dismissal very narrowly avoided at a cost far in excess of repeated unnecessary asbestos testing. That's not the limit of the costs that have been imposed on this council. The issuance of notices by Safe Works being found by the Ombudsman to have been the result not of the implementation of regulations and policies designed to ensure a safer, healthier environment in New South Wales, or indeed of orders from the Office of Local Government, which is meant to ensure good governance across local government in New South Wales, but by the short-term imposition
1 minute.
of political pressure and abuse of power at the highest levels. You've already mentioned it, the Toomer report, McCulloch report, and so on. They've all found a similar exposure of the falsity of a range of ill-founded, malicious accusations. The cost of these has exceeded any financial cost. You've already referred to the cost to certain staff members, now ex-staff members, people who've had to leave the area. We may never get the money cost that it was imposed on council, but we should try. For those who say that they pursued their vendetta to either get at the truth or in some crazy way, or to take the gladiatorial contest that they could see themselves in to some them or whatever, I say, in the words of Cromwell to the Rump Parliament, you've sat too long for any good you've done lately. Depart, I say, and let us be done with you. In the name of God, go.
Thank you, Councillor Fell, and I didn't expect to hear Oliver Cromwell quoted at council, but beautifully done. Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Miles, then Councillor Brown. Councillor Miles.
Thank
Actually,
you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, actually, go ahead, Councillor Miles.
No, that's fine. I'm happy to yield.
You yield. Okay. Well, Councillor Brown, I saw your hand next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The
Councillor
time has
Brown.
now come.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
yeah, I'll yield.
Okay. Councillor
Sorry.
Miles yields. Councillor Brown has the call. I saw Councillor Brown's hand go up. Councillor Brown, do you seek the call? You don't?
I don't think so.
You don't seek the call? Okay. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Miles, do you still yield?
I'm happy to speak if there is no other.
No, there are a bunch of other speakers, but I'll give you the call.
Sort of call.
I'll give you the call, Councillor Miles. There are other speakers, but I'll give
Thank
you the
you.
call.
Mr. Mayor, the time is now.
Councillor Miles.
The time has now come to examine the concept of leadership. We are at a moment now. Sorry?
Councillor Miles, you're largely inaudible. And Councillor Brown, your microphone's still on.
What is
Councillor
wrong?
Miles, I might suggest
Hello?
you turn. Yeah, Councillor Miles, I might suggest you turn your image off and speak without the image on. Councillor Brown, if you could go on mute. Councillor Miles, do you want to try again?
No.
We can hear you now.
I'm not sure if that's better. You want me to speak
Much
now?
better. Much better.
Can
Go
you-
ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm taking it that you can hear me. I'll now start my comments.
Yes.
The time has now come for us to examine the concept of leadership. And this is a moment, this very night, that ends a process that began back in 2017. And those like myself who had heard these allegations and knew that a due process needed to run, wondered, of course, whether we would ever see these reports, whether we would still be in office. Nevertheless, we stood the field. Nevertheless, we went through with the inquiries, calling for them via mayoral minutes from yourself. We did not prejudge the issue. Most of us did not prejudge the issue. Now is the time for us to examine the conduct of one councillor that did prejudge the issue. Prejudge that issue very much in public, on radio, and that councillor, who I'm glad is going to speak after me, is Councillor Kerry Brown. Mr. Mayor, I've listened several times to the interview that she had with Ray Hadley on Radio TGB in December 2017. And there is no doubt that far away from doing what she should have done and calling for calm, calling for an opportunity for all of these inquiries, which were not going to take months or commence in months' time, but years, and were going to take an enormous amount of resources as well. Instead of calling for calm and waiting for this time, this very night, to say what has happened at Blue Mountains Council, for all due process to pass, instead, she went on 2GB and, as Mr. Hadley was making very serious allegations, far from either refuting them or calling for an opportunity for the council to go through these processes, she did none of those things. And in doing so, as I watched that, I listened to that video again, that audio again, I hear tacit, it seems to me tacit support for the allegations that are being made. The reasonable observer could only think that if a councillor of that city is on the radio saying that there are problems, there must be extreme problems, and yet we did not know that at that time. Yet we had not the opportunity.
We've had the run.
to go
Point of
through.
order. We've had the
Point of
run.
order.
And
As I
we
said, point of
have
order.
put ourselves
Point of
to
order,
this
Councillor
very
Miles.
set
Point of order. As I said
recommendation,
to you,
noted
Mr.
from
Mayor,
safety.
I expect you to be able to
Councillor
do
Miles.
the
This is
code of meeting
exactly the
practice.
moment when we should be
Hold
turning
on,
around and
Councillor
saying,
Brown.
this did not need to happen.
I'm sorry, but this
Hold on, Councillor Brown. Just hold on a second. Councillor Miles, on Councillor Brown on a point of order. Councillor Brown, what's
as
the
I
point of
said to
order?
you, Mr. Mayor, I actually do expect you to uphold the code of meeting practice.
Which
You wanted-
which
you
part of the
forewarned
code?
us that you wanted the reference
Councillor
to the code
Brown.
of meeting practice. I'm about to give
Councillor
it to
Brown,
you.
which part of the code?
15.11D insulting or making personal reflections or imputing improper motivations to any council official.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
I'm very disappointed that this
Thank you,
game is
Councillor
even being
Brown. I've got your point of order. Thank you. Councillor Miles may now move away from Councillor Brown. And speak more generally about the conduct of councillors. Councillor Miles. Councillor Miles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
We're also entitled.
We've lost you, Councillor Miles.
We also need to examine. Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, I can.
Okay, I'm not clear if you can hear me.
Can. We can hear you, Councillor Miles.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can hear me, Mr. Mayor.
We can.
Okay. Well, if you're able to hear me, it's time for us also to look at the actions of Minister Keane. Yeah, so I'll yield for the time being on this issue.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Miles. You yield. Councillor McGregor has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It occurs to me that this report shines a light on how state ministers and others contrive to bring down Blue Mountain City Council. And as you said, it's not so much about safety, but rather about other matters that motivated this attempt. And it begs the question, of course, of why was it that they chose to do this? Was it because their state and federal members had recently lost their Blue Mountain seats? Or was it because one of the few of the Fit for the Future metro councils was resisting developer demands for more medium density housing? I guess we'll never know. Whatever the reason, the financial and human costs have been enormous. We know that it has ruined and in some cases ended the careers of both council and safe work officers. We know it has left many, both BMCC and safe work staff, with debilitating mental health problems. We know that the financial cost to the Blue Mountains Council and our community has been estimated at over $10 million, far exceeding the cost associated with the 4 matters mentioned in the report. And while we may well be able to retrieve some of the costs associated with those matters mentioned in the report, I can't, we really do need to find ways to return those costs to the community, those large costs. It's undermined the workforce's confidence in safe work. It's eroded public trust in government and in the public service. And this grubby affair has been the product of an unhealthy relationship between shock jocks and politicians, the Councillor Miles referred to. And if anybody has any doubt about the nature and extent of this political conspiracy, they need only consider the fact that 93% of all orders issued by Safe Work in 2017-18 in New South Wales were served on this small council, Blue Mountain City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor. Any further speakers?
Yes, if I may.
Councillor Fernanda.
Thank you.
You're on mute, Councillor Fernanda.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, thank you. Firstly, I just want to say that for the duration of this process, I think all of our hearts, but maybe from one councillor, has gone out to the community, to the staff and those who have endured the emotional turmoil of going through such a process. The public may not realise, but it has taken an enormous toll on the emotional welfare of our staff and of people in the community. So with this report, it doesn't give any consolation of what you've gone through, but maybe it might be a way of the community knowing that we didn't do what we were accused of. And I want to apologise that the staff that had to endure years of trying to get us out of this mess took its toll on you. It shouldn't have happened. For a few years, I think we've all stayed silent. We can see the politics that have been played out here, and we held our heads up high with a lot of dignity. But as Councillor Miles said, it's time that the public did know. The Ombudsman report has exonerated us of the dreadful allegations that came about from political game playing. And I just want to say that, Councillor Brown, you should hang your head in shame. You were the one who perpetuated this. And I think it's time that you either said a big sorry to our community for the millions of dollars that we have incurred because of your allegations without fact, running to the Gazette and the media every week.
Councillor Fernanda, as indicated earlier, I think it might be best to move on from naming councillors.
All right, well, I won't name the councillor, but the councillor knows. I think it's time you step aside, and I think you go. The damage that has been caused is irreversible. And I'm proud to be a part of this council, but it upsets me to think that there's people like this councillor who can try to tear a council down.
Do I have to do the point of order, or are you going to manage it, Mr.
Councillor Brown, I would ask you to not
Well, I
reflect
mean, I
upon
don't
the
feel I
change.
should have to be the one to
Yes.
step in on this.
Councillor Brown, you can take a point of order if you believe the councillor is out of order. In any event, Councillor Fernanda, I would ask you to move on from Councillor Brown, please.
Well, it's hard to move on when we know one councillor brought this council down, but that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Miles, you're back with us. Can you be heard now? Do you want to just test? Councillor Miles? No, okay. All right. Any councillors wish to speak further? There being no further, I'll move to put, Councillor Brown wishes to speak.
Yeah, I'm not going to say too much. I think I'll just say that I seem to have read a different report from everyone else. As far as that report goes...
Sorry, Councillor Brown. Councillor Fernanda, if you could go on mute. Thank you. Councillor Brown has the floor.
As far as the report goes, unlike Councillor Fell's view that it doesn't deal with all the other notices but they're all the same, that is never said. And I understand that the council put in on these specific notices which were about retesting, in one case for the third time round. As you all know, I think, was the workers and the union who went to the management, then they went to Safe Work, and they called Safe Work in May 2017, and then they went to the Gazette, and then on the 8th of November, the Acting Secretary General of the Union went to Ray Hadley and did 2 interviews over 2 days. So this was over a 6-month period that escalated. Safe Work had to come in that, and I think that they did an amazing job. And I think what is particularly sad is that it is clear from the report that there's 2 or 3 individuals that end up being criticised for actually trying to understand a particular section of the Act and interpret. And so we get down to whether it should be an improvement order or a prohibition order. So you have, for instance, I'm just going to read a little bit of two inspectors. Inspector A's improvement notice documented his reasonable belief that workers, other persons may be exposed to a risk to their health and safety from the inhalation of asbestos fibres at the workplace. The two improvement notices were deemed as complied with without a site inspection. This is the problem, due to the impending Christmas shutdown, which was not an optimal approach to managing the health and safety, where there was a history of non-compliance issues at the facility, this is Springwood, and low levels of worker trust in BMCC's asbestos management. Based on Mr. E's 30-year career in asbestos risk management, he challenged Inspector A's conclusion that the site represented a low risk, given the details of the report and the photographic evidence containing asbestos contaminated dust. And the tests, by the way, showed it was asbestos contaminated. The Code of Practice, How to Manage and Control Asbestos in the Workplace, identifies asbestos contaminated dust, including dust left in a place after past asbestos removal, as the highest risk, as this form of asbestos material has the highest likelihood of airborne fibres, the exposure pathway for asbestos-related diseases. The USU, that's a union, had contacted Safe Work on 23rd of January, the day Inspector A returned, advising they had stopped work in a number of areas in the Springwood depot due to asbestos concerns. To say this is just a beat up is not to understand that there were so many people, workers, Safe Work people, trying to work, and the union. And behind it is something that is not in dispute. The council did not have an asbestos management plan. It had no register available to workers. It had no complete register. The very foundations of what was needed were not there. That is not in dispute. We have agreed to over $500,000 in enforceable undertaking with Safe Work so that we did not face 8 prosecutions. We preferred to take the $500,000, which is ratepayers' money, and to do good things for asbestos with that rather than be prosecuted on 8 counts. To treat this as a beat up, you know what I think is really sad is I think this council has done an amazing job. We've actually got there. But you know what? It's taken a lot of people. And sometimes the fourth estate, the dreaded media, and certainly I agree with everyone. By the time we got to the end of this, Ray Hadley was not helping anything. But the point was we had the Gazette in there. We had the Sun Herald in there at one stage. We had the ABC, and it was driving things. It made it very difficult. Some careers have been ruined by this. But I think that what we hopefully will learn from the public inquiry is how it got to that. And to simply vilify people is not to understand. What we have admitted to the Commissioner, there are organisational failures. We have to acknowledge what were those organisational failures. Then we will be free.
3 seconds.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Councillor Hoare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And look, I would really like to extend my thanks to the previous speakers for covering off on the particulars of this hugely significant report. I want to thank you all for your contributions. I certainly agree with the vast majority of what has been said. But yes, coming to the matter in hand, the long-term and astute observers of council proceedings may have observed from time to time, Councillor Brown and I bring different perspectives to issues and occasionally form different views. And regrettably, tonight is one of those times that we will need to respectfully agree to disagree. The Ombudsman's report into Safe Work's regulatory overreach on the Blue Mountains asbestos affair is indeed extraordinary and unprecedented. Although the language is very measured and cautious, the political ramifications of the report are huge. It speaks volumes about the importance of the checks and balances within our democracy that can prevent the exercise of unbridled power by the executive branch of the government of the day and to maintain the rule of law. But the issues that are concerned are far bigger than the Blue Mountains. I think previous speakers have outlined those in great detail, and I don't need to repeat them. But this report raises serious concerns about how easy it was for a supposedly independent regulator to be manipulated and misdirected for political ends. At the very least, it only took 18 months for the Ombudsman to intervene, to investigate and to call out this abuse of executive power by the state government. But the question left hanging in the air is which agency might be next and which issues might next be pursued against which other councils, other local councils, the next time the New South Wales shock jocks decide to unleash their fury from their bully pulpits to pressure the state government. Although I know we owe a huge debt of gratitude to the Ombudsman from all of the people of the Blue Mountains for shedding light on this egregious abuse of power, the broader questions raised about the operation of proper governance in this state by this report, I think, deserves greater scrutiny. I believe that these questions are deserving of further investigation, perhaps by an upper house inquiry. And I would very much appreciate the opportunity to work collaboratively with other members of the governing body and our legal advisors to explore the potential scope of the terms of reference that we might put forward to the members of the Legislative Council in order to improve the systems of governance in this state to prevent the wanton abuse of power that is so clearly yet moderately outlined by this extraordinary report. Look, there's much more that I could say, but I think it's all been said before, and I'll leave my comments there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoare. Councillor Hollywood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors and staff. First of all, I would like to thank the Mayor and the CEO, our lawyers, our legal team, and all of the staff who worked so hard, so very hard, to keep us in office so that we could receive this report. This report would have meant nothing had those around the table got their wish and seen this council suspended. So we owe you a debt. Our community owes you a debt of gratitude, and I thank you. Mr. Mayor, this historic Ombudsman's report reflects on a time where there was a prolonged attack on this council from people who wanted to see this council, our local democracy, gone. And the findings and recommendations of this report are shocking and alarming. What the Ombudsman shows us is that safe work officers, safety regulators, were placed in an untenable situation where they issued unlawful and unjustified prohibition and improvement notices due to an unrelenting and highly orchestrated public and political ambush and assault on this council. The impacts of this undue and outrageous political pressure were not only felt by the staff at BMCC and their families, but also staff at Safe Work and their families. But we also need to remember that it was the Blue Mountains community that was also affected, caught up in this outrageous assault. Children and families and staff in the lead up to Christmas were affected. Children at Wentworth Falls Preschool weren't able to have the normal end of year concerts in their preschool that they'd attended for the last 2 to 3 years. The preschool was closed for 2 weeks due to notices that we have now found to be unlawful, unreasonable and disproportionate in terms of the testing that was required to take place. Children and families at Heatherbrae at Lawson were also affected. Hirers of the Lawson Mechanics Institute were also affected, and community members who wanted the Hazelbrook car park fixed, along with many other projects, were affected because all of these projects were put on hold while we dealt with a manufactured crisis. And this political assault and media scrutiny had an impact on all of our community. Community members who in the lead up to Christmas in 2017 were hearing our council trash talked And many people found themselves having to take up arms and defend our local democracy, having to write letters to the minister to say, don't suspend our council, it is not warranted. Yes, we needed to improve our asbestos management, but this Ombudsman's report shows us that we were no different to any other council. And I can tell you that I'm so grateful that we stood strong and we didn't listen to the naysayers. The majority of us could see that this was, in fact, a political attack. And I can tell you that tears welled up in my eyes on the weekend when I read page 78 of the report, and I thank the Mayor for reading it out in full. It said that if we had been able to continue working constructively with Safe Work, as was occurring from May through to November, despite what a certain councillor has just said, despite it, we would have avoided the unlawful actions from Safe Work. None of this would have happened. It is unforgivable that people used asbestos of all things, as a weapon for their own political agenda to see our council suspended. Mr. Mayor, it is now time for all of this to stop. People need to stop twisting the facts to suit their own ends. People need to stop twisting the findings of the Ombudsman's report to cover your own back. People need to stop playing games with our community and our council. And people need to stop seconding motions of certain councillors who have lost the credibility of their own party. Instead, Mr. Mayor, it's time to consider the chaos and hurt that has been ravaged upon our community. Is
30 seconds.
Crisis was it worth it? It's time for councillors to apologise for their part in this.
Time.
It's time for those who have led this political assault to consider their positions and resign.
Council, your time has expired. Councillor Bowling, we have a very good view of your midsection. Any other councillors wish to speak? If there are no further councillors wishing to speak, then I'll exercise my right of reply. Councillors, we must not ignore the fact that every notice examined, every notice the subject of the complaint, every one of them was found to have been unlawful or inappropriately issued, all of them. The Ombudsman has taken the extraordinary step of calling for a public apology to our organisation and for recompense. Now, for students of Ombudsman's reports, the Ombudsman's reports, and I say it with deep affection and respect, are not normally colourful documents. Are normally very scholarly, but perhaps not entertaining or striking. But for the Ombudsman to turn around and say to the state's safety regulator, in which all of us should have great confidence, that you must apologise and recompense for your actions, is an extraordinary step. And if you note the latter points of the mayoral minute, we don't intend to leave it there. You'll notice that in 6 and 7 of the mayoral minute, I've asked the CEO to consider further civil legal action against organisations whose behaviour, whose negligence may have had proximity to bringing us here to be looked at for further action. With all the money that's been lost, money that could have been spent on bushfire recovery or COVID recovery or local infrastructure, we owe it to our community to see if we can recover those funds from those organisations. You'll notice I also say at point 7 that we need advice on whether there are further actions that could be taken against individuals named in that report by position or directly. We owe it to our community, given what's been lost, to do just that. It is extraordinary for the Ombudsman to call for a safety regulator to apologise and to recompense. Safe Work New South Wales can launch prosecutions of a criminal nature like the police. Imagine if there was an independent quasi-judicial report into the police to say that actions taken by police were unlawful or inappropriate or subject to interference from above. Can you imagine the ramifications of that? Well, this is a law enforcement organisation too. Make no mistake, these are historic findings and most unusual. They are extraordinarily strong. All notices issued that were examined, unlawful or unreasonably issued. The Ombudsman found that inspectors had been influenced from above, influenced by senior management, and linked that influence to radio broadcast. The second inspection at Springwood that was referred to and was quoted was actually found, the notices were found to be inappropriately issued. It wasn't like that second inspection went well. The notices examined, relevant to that, were also found to have been subject of influence and therefore inappropriate. Not one notice examined, not one survived scrutiny. The Ombudsman found that the interference was damaging to SafeWork New South Wales, and SafeWork inspectors themselves spoke about the impact on them, spoke about the fact that to that point no one had come and seen them as to their welfare, given what they'd been through. No one had asked them, no one had approached them. What happened was that a commentator got involved. Ministers responded to that commentator, and in the chain of events, somehow inspectors were told to issue notices they didn't want to issue by senior staff. But just pause and think about that. Commentator gets involved, ministers respond, and somehow in all of that, senior management are ringing inspectors and saying, no, you will issue a notice. You will. There's a report about 2 inspectors sitting at St John's Road, Blaxland, and getting a phone call. No more agreed undertakings, issue notices. And those inspectors speak to the effect that had on them. And my heart goes out to them. It is an enormous thing that a chain of events leading from broadcasts ended up seeing inspectors' decisions being subject to inappropriate interference. In my opinion, SafeWork was entitled to expect that its minister at that time would protect its integrity. SafeWork inspectors were entitled to expect that the minister at that time would protect them and their professional integrity on the ground. None of us will know how the inspectors came to get orders from their senior management to change their professional judgment. One thing is for sure in all of that, as the commentator was calling for more and the minister was responding, a chain of events below the minister, perhaps not involving the minister, led to inspectors' integrity and professionalism being put under pressure. And for that, I think the minister of the day needs to strongly consider his position and whether it was appropriate at that time and whether he provided the protection, the independence of his organisation deserved. The public inquiry will continue. It's time for us all to stop accepting assertions as fact and rely upon the evidence that comes forward and mesh the results of this Ombudsman's report with the interim reports of the public inquiry and understand that from true evidence, we are given the tools to lead. There were issues at Blue Mountain City Council. They needed to be addressed. They've been addressed. And as page 78 of the report says, they were being addressed. Councillors, there's one matter before us, mayoral minute standing in my name, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, and I put it. All those in favour? Against? I declare it carried unanimously. Thank you. Mayoral minute number 2, it's moved me, it's seconded Councillor Christie. It perhaps doesn't require...
Hang on, I didn't support that. I didn't
Okay.
support that.
Sorry, you're waving your hand. So Councillor Brown, I'll call that again.
Yes,
All those in favour?
I had a question.
Well, the vote's been put.
Well, I
All
had
those
my
in
hand up
favour?
for a question.
The vote's been put. All
Well,
those in
I
favour?
didn't vote for it. I
All
don't.
right, well, Councillor Brown, thank you. You're out of order. I'll put the vote again. Show your
I have a
hands.
question for the General Manager.
I'll call the vote. All those in favour?
In favour.
Against? All in favour with Councillor Brown against. Councillor Brown with a question.
Yeah, the questions are, I've got questions through you to the General Manager regarding this, the suggested legal action. Is the General Manager suggesting that they will be questioning or challenging the other 37 notices or the enforceable undertaking?
Sorry, Councillor Brown, the matter's been put to the vote. The questions are out of order. We're now on item 2. You can address your questions directly to the CEO. Item number 2 is moved by me, mayoral matter of urgency, seconded by Councillor Christie. Councillors, this is a fairly simple matter. You've been briefed on the fact that an odour has been emanating from the Blaxland tip since the unseasonable rains of February. Councillor Brown, if you could go on mute, background noise. Those rains led to odours emitting from the tip, and we know that staff have been working to try and address that. As we approach September, those odours have not ceased, and Councillors Christie, Bowling and I have formed the view that that isn't good enough for our constituents. And so this mayoral matter of urgency calls for us to be given the requisite information such that we can support the staff in their endeavours, and I don't doubt their endeavours, to correct these issues. There is also, I think, a misapprehension in the community that somehow we have moved landfill closer to homes than was previously undertaken. Would like to have that cleared up as well. So it's a simple matter. It's an urgent matter because the stench can be overpowering when close to the tip, and yesterday was detected as far away as Glenbrook. That's all I need to say. Does the seconder wish to speak? Or are you content with what's been said? Councillor Christie.
I'm content. I'm content. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Does anyone wish to speak against the matter? There being one matter before us, I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Thank you. Next mayoral minute is moved by me and seconded by the Deputy Mayor. I would like to acknowledge the passing of a very special person. I would like to acknowledge the passing of Freeman of the City, Thelma Murphy. Thelma Murphy was an extraordinary woman in the life of the city of Blue Mountains. From her time on council to her work in the community, she was a powerhouse. The marks of Thelma's community involvement remain firmly in place for all of us to see. The transformation of parts of what's now called Ward 3 are down very much to the early days of Thelma's time in public life. And that continued beyond her leaving council. In 1995, what I thought was an inappropriate development was planned behind my dear old mum's place in Winmalee, and it passed the council, possibly appropriately, but at the time I didn't think so. And I decided I was going to run for council. And someone told me I should ring Thelma Murphy and have a conversation with her about what it's like to be on council. So as a stranger, this 20-something-year-old rang Thelma, and she gave me about an hour and a half of her time and talked to me about what it was like on council. She didn't care who I was, what my political background was. She was generous and passionate, and it spoke to me then of someone who'd made an incredible difference to the people of the city of Blue Mountains. Last time we saw Thelma was on Australia Day. nearly 94 years of age, or she might have been 94 even at the time. She was on the stage in her electric wheelchair. She was there for the last citizenship ceremony that to date I've presided over pre-COVID. Bent down and gave her a kiss and marvelled at the fact that here she was, after nearly a century on this earth, still contributing and celebrating the making of new Australian citizens. Vale Thelma Murphy, you are one of a kind. I'm proud to call you a friend. I extend my love to your family. I will miss seeing you around. I will miss knowing that you are present in our community. And I think you led a life of someone who absolutely was dedicated to the place in which she lived. I'd like to end by thanking her family for generously lending Thelma to us, for giving her to us, for not having her there for them at important times, because you were part of her journey and you were part of her service to this city. The Deputy Mayor has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like you, I first met Thelma just before I ran for council, and when I was on council, every so often I'd get an email or she'd see me in the street, and over an issue she'd discuss something. Like you, I saw her on Australia Day, and I sat next to her there at the Australia Day ceremony. She was frail then, but she was still active, and she always had the community at heart. So I just want to pay my respects to her family and thank her for her service to the community. There are a lot of people in Ward 3 or in the central part of the Blue Mountains that remember her very fondly, and she'll be dearly missed within the community. So I pay my respects.
Thank you, Councillor van der Klee. Councillor Fell.
I'll be very brief indeed. I'd also like to acknowledge the enormous contribution that Thelma made to the Blue Mountains, and particularly in the Ward 3 area. And I express that on behalf of the residents of Ward 3, and note that her tradition or her gift of service is perpetuated by her daughter Liz, and it's great to be in an area where we have a person like that operating. We are, in terms of the passing of Thelma Murphy, we are all diminished.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further councillors wish to speak? Can I just acknowledge, Councillor Miles, I was actually going to speak for you, wondering if you could be heard, but have a go.
Well, I hope so. Look, signal issues being what they are, I'll just say that everyone knows everyone in Springwood, and everyone knew Auntie Thelma. She was always around from an early age that I can remember, going back to primary school, and she was an institution of the neighbourhood centre as well. So she was one of us.
I'm afraid we've lost you. I'm afraid we've lost you, Councillor Miles, but you got the first words out. I was going to also reflect on the conversation you and I had, and the love and respect you had for Thelma that you expressed to me just last night. And I want to acknowledge that you have those thoughts and thank you for them. Councillor Fernanda has the call.
Thank you. I also just want to pass on my deepest condolences and sadness of the passing. There's people that are in our community that you look up towards, and people that you think you'd like to follow into their footsteps, because they're genuinely good people. They care for others, they're unselfish, they have passion for what they believe in. And as a councillor of Ward 3 and as an independent, I just hope that I could just even by a minuscule follow in those footsteps and leave behind a legacy as great as what Thelma did. So I don't think anyone could match it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fernanda. Any further councillors wish to speak? If not, I'll put the matter. It's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? All those against? Declare it carried unanimously. Councillors, I was going to do this earlier in the night, and I hope you'll indulge me for just a moment, but I knew that we were heading into a significant debate, and I wanted to let a period of calm fall upon the council before I did this. It's not a motion, and I'm out of order, but I hope no one will take me to be out of order. I want to acknowledge the passing of Annie Beecroft. Annie was part of our executive services unit. She backed us in and she worked with us for nearly a couple of years. She was always diligent, precise. She was always kind-hearted, and nothing was too much for Annie. I will always remember the period as fires closed in on our city in 2019, and I was up here. I held the delegation with the CEO of the council at that time, and I was working. It was a catastrophic day, as they say. Annie Beecroft was here with the express purpose of supporting me in the work I had to do that day. She was always Storm's loyal backstop. And if anyone knows how seriously Storm takes her role, for her to let anyone else near me just showed how greatly Storm trusted Annie Beecroft. And it was a day when warnings were being issued about people needing to be near their homes, and she just kept working. I think she and I were possibly the last two in the building. She was calm. She was witty. She was just such a good person to have around at a time when I was feeling pretty under the pump. And I didn't know then how sick Annie was. I didn't know until today that Annie was that ill. I didn't know she wasn't at work. It wasn't that long ago that we were receiving emails from Annie Beecroft. In fact, Annie had been battling cancer for quite a long time. She was due to complete officers' exams in the Australian Army Reserves. She was out there doing her fitness work. She was a beautiful, intelligent, fun, inspiring, wonderful young woman. My heart goes out tonight to her partner, with whom I have been sharing messages today, to her 18-year-old son, to her family and friends, to those in this building who worked with her. I know that Paul, her partner, will send us through the details for her funeral when he knows them. But the shock of Annie's loss is something that we should all reflect upon. And I would like for us to just take a moment to remember one of us who was diligent to this organisation, committed to this community, and part of the team I think all of us feel very much dedicated to. Vale Annie Beecroft, we will all miss you. And I think it's appropriate now that we just take a moment to reflect upon Annie's passing, as we reflected also upon that of Thelma Murphy. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, I'd like to take items, I know we've got a long night ahead, and given they're on similar issues, I'm going to pass I'm going to move mayoral minutes 2, 3 and 4 as an omnibus motion. I'm happy to take the Deputy Mayor as a seconder, because items 2, 3 and 4 relate to similar things, and I'll take the call. What I have here are mayoral minutes that reinforce a long-standing arrangement or view that the council has, and about circuses that use wild animals, and it formalises that long-held position in a moved and resolved ban. It is not appropriate for animals to suffer as they do in circuses. Quite happy to have circuses that don't involve animals in the Blue Mountains, but it is not appropriate, Councillor Hollywood, microphone please. It is not appropriate in the 21st century for animals to be abused for the entertainment of others. I also believe it's appropriate that we do not allow the sale of exotic fur and animal skins on council land. This motion is similar to one put by the City of Sydney, and it takes a stand on, I think, what's covered in the next mayoral minute, and that is what we've seen the ACT Labor government do, and that is to recognise animals as sentient beings. And really, that last resolution is why I move the previous two. Our council took a stand on the rights of nature. We were absolutely out of the blocks in doing that. It was a first. And now tonight, it's appropriate, if we respect the rights of nature, to also take a strong stand in relation to animals. We have seen how badly wildlife have suffered in our community during the fires, and we've seen the passion for domestic animals that's come from recent conversations around the future of the RSPCA. Our community cares about nature and it cares about animals. It cares about wildlife and it cares about domestic animals. As the ACT government has recognised, animals are sentient beings. Animals feel fear, they feel pain. Animals care for their young, they care for one another, they are aware of their surroundings and their life. It is important, therefore, that our council, as we have with rights of nature, takes a lead and therefore recognises animals as sentient beings, bans the sale of exotic fur and animal skins on council land, and bans circuses that use wild animals for the entertainment of others. I am quite passionate about this, and I know others of you are, and I would like to thank all of you in anticipation of your full support. I'll ask the Deputy Mayor to speak, then Councillor Fernanda has the floor. Deputy Mayor yields, Councillor Fernanda has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say thank you so much for bringing this to Council. As you know, that I also am a very big passionate advocate of animal rights. Always have been, and in fact, as I'm sitting here, and you can't see me on Zoom, I'm sitting here with my 3 dogs on my lap, one which is a rescue dog of last week. You are right, animals feel, they're emotional beings, and the abuse and the exploitation of animal products and using animals in circuses for entertainment is absolutely abhorrent. And I'm so proud that this council and that you, Mr. Mayor, are putting up this motion, and that we can be a leader and a voice for the animals and stand up and say that our local government area, our community, our council will never support the hidden and I guess also the exploitation, the blatant exploitation of animals and abusing their rights and recognising them as beings. They do feel, they have souls. I've been with the RSPCA actually since I was 3 years old as a member, and not one person can convince me otherwise that animals don't feel inside. So thank you for bringing this to the floor. I'm really excited that this is a motion that hopefully everyone will put their hand up for.
Further speakers? If there are none, there's one matter before us, or 3 matters before us in the form of an omnibus motion. Mayoral minutes 2, 3 and 4. I'll put them all. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. I deeply appreciate that. Councillors, mayoral minute number 5, standing in my name, is moved by me and seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Councillors, we can start now the recruitment process for the establishment of the Mayoral Cycling Advisory Committee. Let's get on with it. I don't think this requires debate, but I move this mayoral minute, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, and in so doing nominate Councillor Miles to be the chair of the committee and to initiate the recruitment process. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Brown.
Yep, I support the advisory committee, but I don't support this process. I think it's quite extraordinary that we would be appointing someone and starting to recruit people before we have the terms of reference. I've never seen that done, and I consider it extraordinary to do that. I mean, aside from anything else, I'm still not clear even what the scope is of this, because I had, being I suppose a road cyclist, had assumed it was about that, and then I realised after a comment at the last meeting, I think by you, Mr. Mayor, that it was really about the off-road. And so all those issues about what's the scope, what are the terms of reference, I don't support recruiting and people before the terms of reference have been agreed. And I think that needs to be done by the council. It actually has to come, we have to approve those. I don't think it should be done by the people who've been appointed without the terms of reference. It's back to front.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? There's one matter before us. We established the committee, launched the recruitment process and elect Councillor Miles. CEO, do you wish to say something?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just to say that the date is wrong in the report. It should be the 29th of September.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, CEO. One matter before us. All those in favour? Against? All in favour except Councillor Brown against. Declare it carried. Thank you. All right. Now I will go to exclusions. I'll go around the table. I'll start with Councillor Fell. Is there anything, Councillor Fell, that you would like to withdraw?
Yes, item 7.
Yes.
There'll need to be nominations there.
Yes.
Item 19 and item 20.
Items 7, 19 and 20. Thank you, Councillor Fell. Councillor Hollywood. You're content. Councillor Bowling.
You're already out.
You're content. Councillor Hua.
Beg your pardon, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, if we could pull out item 18 for a quick discussion.
Yes, Councillor Hua, you would like me to pull out item number 18. Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yes, I'd pull out 11, 14 and 16.
Thank you. Councillor McGregor. You're content. Councillor Schreiber. I'll take it you are content. Councillor van der Clay.
21, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor van der Clay.
I was content, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Schreiber confirms his contentment, and I'm content to hear it. Councillor Miles. Content. Councillor Christie.
Content.
Content. Councillor Fernanda.
Content.
Thank you. I'll put all those, and then I'm reminded that we haven't done declarations, and we'll do that just after I put these. So, councillors, mark your business paper. Items 6, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 15, 17, 22 and 23 will now be moved in globo. That's moved Councillor van der Clay, seconded Councillor Fell. Those in favour, against, declare it carried unanimously. Councillors, I'm remiss. I take it there were no declarations to make tonight? No all round. Thank the Manager for Governance and Risk for reminding me of my my slipping there. Councillors, I will now put, did I put the matters in globo, CEO? I did, didn't I? It was unanimous. It was put and it passed unanimously. Yes, everyone's nodding.
Yes, it was.
Unanimously, yes, thank you. I now go to item number 7, local government conference. Councillor Fell wishes to move something, seconded by Councillor Hollywood. Councillor Fell, what do you wish to move?
I'll move the report and make
Yes.
the following nomination.
There's an amendment. Sorry, there's an amendment that's come through that is the motion that.
Yes, Councillor Fell's moving the amendment, is he?
Yes.
Yeah, that everybody should have received. Sorry.
Yes.
Just wanted
Thank
to
you.
make sure people were clear.
Thanks, Councillor Hollywood. Councillor Fell, what are their nominations? You said you wish to make nominations in moving that way?
The four nominations.
Well, what I'll do is I'll put the motion first and then come to the nominations, if that's okay. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. Councillor Fell, your nominations.
My nominations are Councillor McGregor, Councillor Hollywood, Councillor Hoare, and Councillor van der Klee.
Okay. Are there any other nominations?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. A
Yes.
nomination for Councillor Schreiber.
Okay, Councillor Schreiber. Is that seconded? Councillor Brown, do you second Councillor Schreiber's nomination?
Yeah, I do.
Thank you. Councillors, there's 4 positions and 5 nominations. We can, CEO, resolve to send 4 with 1 observer, can we not?
I believe so.
If we wish.
Yes.
All right. All right. Councillors, with that in mind, do you wish to proceed to a ballot for the 4 positions, or do we wish to move that we have 4 plus an observer? And we can determine who the voting delegates are and who the observer is by ballot. Councillor Schreiber, I see your hand in the air. You have the call. Councillor Schreiber? Were you seeking the call, Councillor Schreiber? I can't see you on the screen, so I don't know. I just saw your hand in the air. Are you seeking the call, Councillor Schreiber? Councillor Schreiber, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm happy to move the first 4: McGregor, Councillor McGregor, Councillor Hollywood, Councillor Hall, Councillor van der Klee, myself as the observer.
Is that agreeable to the mover and seconder? Yes. Well, then the motion becomes McGregor, Hollywood, Hoare, van der Klee as delegates, Councillor Schreiber as an observer. That's agreeable to the mover and seconder, so they'll take that on board. It becomes the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 11, who brought this out? Councillor Brown, do you wish to move something?
I just want to move, I'll just move the motion.
Move the report as a motion. Moved Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor McGregor. Councillor Brown has the call.
Yeah, I want to congratulate the staff and the CEO. I think this is fantastic. I note that we've created so much skill and capacity that we are now creating compliant and comprehensive asbestos registers and management plans using our own specialist knowledge. That's really coming in at a completely other level, and it is fantastic in 2.5 years that we've got to this, and that we're now also advising and assisting other councils. I also note that we've, since obtaining its Class B certification, Council has been successfully audited on 3 occasions during asbestos removal works. Each audit has resulted in positive feedback from Safe Work New South Wales. Safe Work New South Wales requirements are stringent, and the feedback is a testament to the strong processes and safety awareness that Council has developed. I'm acknowledging both Safe Work and Council here, which I think is important, and that stringency. But I really genuinely want to say that I think that we have put a lot of resources into this, and into our having a chief safety officer as well as an assistant or safety officer, and having an ongoing team that's working on asbestos removal and who are being trained, and also that the whole of the organisation is now part of this process, which is completely compliant with the Work Health and Safety Act, that everyone is included in the developing of our work health and safety systems, and that we've now, was thinking it was Her Majesty's Task Force, but it's actually Hazardous Materials Team, I think. But we have gone beyond just asbestos to hazardous materials. So I think that is actually one of the great outcomes, and I congratulate the staff for that.
Thank you. Does the seconder wish to speak? Councillor McGregor, no. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Hollywood, do you wish to speak?
So just, I think the report is really comprehensive as well, and congratulate the staff. But I do also want to say that given the conversation and debate that we had at the beginning and outset of this meeting, I do think that people need to be reflecting on some of the comments that have been made both here tonight, out in the media just really recently, and also within the Ombudsman's report. I actually think that I'm getting a little sick of these kind of, how would you call it? How would you call it? Kind of trying to paper over what actually led up to these events, that a crisis was manufactured and that staff were put through an enormous amount of stress. I congratulate the staff for managing to get through that when we think of what they were actually put through and what is outlined in the report and what may come in the public inquiry. But the interim findings are already really revealing. So I think it's really important that we continue to call this out as a governing body, that we don't let these comments go through. From my perspective, those comments are about papering over the hurt caused.
Point of order. If the councillor is making disparaging comments about my comments, it's a point of order.
Yes, I'm not sure the councillor.
15.1D, I'm really,
No point of order. The councillor didn't refer to anyone in particular.
Well, she was referring to comments.
Councillor Brown, there is no point of order, and I'm going to call you to order in a moment.
Which comments is she referring to?
Councillor Brown, you don't get to debate points of order. When I rule on a point of order as the chair, that is it. There is no point of order because many people were involved in this soup, and Councillor Hollywood named no one. But Councillor Hollywood, do be cautious. You were straying close. I haven't called you to order, but I do caution you.
Mr. Mayor, I had actually concluded my comments.
All right, thank you. Anything further on this matter? It's one matter before us. Councillor McGregor, you wish to speak? Councillor McGregor.
Yes, I mean, I think the report is a very positive report, and we should, and that's the way it should be considered. It was the product of a lot of people who did a lot of work during a very difficult time, admittedly, and it's improved our hazardous materials work great, skills base greatly. I think we should applaud all those involved. Thank you.
All right. Anything further? It's nothing further. It's one matter before us. Item number 11, I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. I thank you. Item number 14, who pulled this out?
Miles in favour.
Yes, Miles in favour. Thank you. I've taken it to be unanimous. Item number 14, who pulled this out?
Me.
Councillor Brown, do you wish to move something?
I'll just move it.
Yes, move Councillor Brown. Second to Councillor Fell. Councillor Brown has the floor.
I think, as Councillor Fell probably also wants to say, I just want to congratulate Paul Brinkman, the director of the Cultural Centre, and the staff for the creative strategy. I think it's what I really like about this is that the focus is actually not just on the notion of the creatives as in the professionals. There's a strong push for having increasing and improving the incomes and the successes of people, professionals, but there's also this concept that our community is creative, and that that the creative strategy is also about building creativity in everyone. So I really love that principle. I also like that there's now focus on going into public spaces, and that we will, having more public art in our public spaces. And I support the response that we got from some of the people who made submissions about it. Would be really wonderful to have the City of Art Trust be more than 50,000, but we do need to find those resources. But I do think it would be great to have more money in that trust. And I suppose the other thing I just wanted to note was that emphasis on, as a City of the Arts in the World Heritage Area, that this is about having a sustainable industry in every sense, which is both that it sustains people, that people can sustain, a livelihood through the arts and through being a creative person, but also that it's sustainable to the environment. So it's not, it has that side of it, that art can be a very ecological industry as well. So I just congratulate the staff for the strategy. I think it's, and for the community as well for it. Thank you.
All right. Anything further? Councillor Feld, do you wish to speak?
Very briefly, once again, just to add my comments that I totally support this draft creative strategy, and it's good to see the creative arts having a place within council's strategy and the alignment with our community planning statements, strategic planning statements. It's just great to see this. It's the first time we've had that, and I think for a first effort, it's pretty good. So obviously, it's an ongoing process of development with it, but it's a fantastic first effort. Thanks.
All right. Anything further? There's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 16. Who brought this out? Councillor Brown, you wish to move something?
I have an amendment that I think everyone's hopefully
we've seen it. It's not an amendment. It becomes a motion. You move that. Is it seconded?
Yes.
Councillor Schreiber. Okay. Councillor Brown, you have the floor, and the motion is in your name and Councillor Schreiber's.
Yeah, the amendment is really just to clarify that, and the staff have agreed this was the intention, just to clarify that the path that was shown on the map that was still identified as a potential future accessible path will not be considered for that, because it's not an appropriate placement of it, and that will become, just as it is now, a pathway. Probably, it's with a soft surfacing. The accessible access is now from the bottom of the park through the Anzac Gates and goes all the way around the pond and to the what's called the activity hub, or the community hub there, which is where the pool and the playground and everything is. So that's where the accessibility is now from. So that was just a minor amendment to clarify that, as requested by the community. And also just to thank the staff and the community for this master plan, because it has taken some years. And there's been a lot of toing and froing and a huge amount of consultation. But we have kept the English landscape style of the park and recognised its heritage and also its water sensitivity, as well as the fact that it has great potential because of its wateriness. So yes, I said congratulations to everyone. It took a lot of work, but we have got there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
The seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Councillor Brown said, I think it's wonderful that we've got to this. And with the changing of that pathway, it actually means that it goes straight around to the new toilet blocks that are going to be built there, which will make it a lot more accessible for people with handicap and so forth, instead of them having to come down that long path. So I think that's a great move forward, and to thank the community for the work, and especially the staff on this, as it's Councillor Brown said, it's been many years in the making, but it's finally got there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor McGregor? Yes, Councillor McGregor, you have the call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I would add my thanks to the staff. It has been a long and at times difficult negotiating process. I must admit that I was one of those who felt somewhat uncomfortable about the reaction to the universal ability pathway, the shortening of it, as it were. It's happened a couple of times where community groups have kicked back against disability pathways, and I'm somewhat uncomfortable with that because of our policy positions on it, but they seem to have reached a fairly good compromise in this case. So congratulations to all. Thanks.
Yes, all right. Anything further? Nothing further. One matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, declare it carried unanimously. Thank you. We move on to notices of motion. Notice of motion 18. Who pulled this? Is this again?
Mine, I think.
Councillor, it is indeed Councillor Hua. It's seconded Councillor Hollywood. Councillor Hua has the floor.
Thank you very much. I don't intend to speak for long on this. I think it's fairly self-evident. Just a good opportunity to use our advocacy powers to hopefully improve the chances of reaching a global solution to a global problem that's impacting us very heavily here. I just wanted to acknowledge that there is a debate in the literature, in advocacy circles around whether direct bans or more phased approaches, or even tighter regulatory approach is the best way to go. But yeah, I do feel that on balance, having looked into this, that I feel confident that advocating a ban is a useful approach. And I just wanted to note that it is supported by the United Nations Biodiversity Chief, Elizabeth Maraba-Marema, who's been working on this for a very, very long time. And look, I think that's probably all I need to say.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Hua. Does the seconder wish to speak? Councillor Hollywood?
No, I thank Councillor Hall for bringing this forward, and yes, it is important.
All right, thank you. All right, there's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Is there any opposition? Declare it carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Hollywood, I believe 19 is yours. Move Councillor Fell. Councillor Hollywood has the call.
Thank you. And look, I know the hour is late, so I will keep it short. I do, first of all, actually want to just take this moment to thank the council staff, but also my colleagues on council for your support for me being the councillor representative to the New South Wales Public Libraries Association, and also to the conference.
Yes.
Local.
That's Councillor Miles doing promotion about an hour ago.
Yeah, I know. It's like cut it.
Just remember the public's watching, so let's continue.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I wanted to say thank you for that opportunity to represent the council on the New South Wales Public Libraries Association, but also Local Government New South Wales Conference. And from that, as is outlined in the notice of motion, we have run a very successful campaign collaborating with libraries across New South Wales through Local Government New South Wales and the network of New South Wales Public Libraries Association. And we've the whole motion, the original motion, was actually brought forward by this council, so with your support. And we managed to get $60 million over 4 years to improve library funding in New South Wales. This is the next stage of trying to complete that campaign, which is basically trying to get the amount of funding that we've got indexed and agreed and put into legislation. It's a tougher call to make, but we are doing the lobbying that we need to be doing as New South Wales Public Libraries Association, and part of that is asking all councils to support this campaign, because that's very important in terms of our lobbying, to say that councils, regardless of their political persuasion or colour or where they are, regional, large, small, all support this campaign. So I really hope that you will consider supporting my notice of motion.
Thank you. Seconder wish to speak? No.
No, Mr.
All right. Anyone opposed to this? There's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, declare it carried unanimously. Item number 20 is that Councillor Hollywood as well? Seconded Councillor McGregor. Councillor Hollywood has the call.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. And really the purpose of this notice of motion, which is also being passed hopefully by councils across New South Wales, and is really part of a broader campaign led by Local Government New South Wales to advocate for a seat for local government at the National Cabinet table. So as everybody will be aware, since the COVID-19 pandemic, the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, has reconfigured the way in which COAG works. It's been done, I would say, a little bit on the run, in the sense that we were in the midst of a pandemic and the National Cabinet made sense for it to be made up of state and Commonwealth First Ministers. What has happened now is that is going to be the permanent arrangements. And what we find is that local government, our local government representative, ALGA, has lost the seat at the table. And when you think about some of the things that we've been talking about tonight, across all our council meetings, there are many portfolio areas where all three tiers of government have a role to play. And, that can be disaster preparedness and risk management. It can be whole infrastructure development. It can be the way in which our funds are carved up through the budget, but also how we look after our environment, even our creative strategies. If you look at it, that the Australia Council, our federal body, funds much of the arts, but also the state government has a role, and we've just approved a creative strategy where we will have a leadership role. Having a seat at the table for National Cabinet means that all tiers of government can be represented and can help formulate better policy. If local government isn't at the table, we're going to have poorer policy, and we're going to be far more at the mercy of state and federal government policy making, instead of being able to have a legitimate seat and a legitimate voice and a legitimate perspective about what local communities need and want and prioritise and value. So I really hope that you'll support this motion.
Seconder wish to speak?
No, Mr. Mayor. Well, just briefly, Mr. Mayor, I support everything that Councillor Hollywood has said. I just underline, a couple of issues where the three levels of government are necessary, and one of them is to recognise the voice to Parliament for Indigenous people. That's got to be delivered at all three levels of government. The other is addressing the huge backlog, maintenance backlog that local governments are carrying across the country, and the poor share of government revenue that we get back compared to the burden that we carry. So yes, I'm very keen to support this.
All right. Anything further? There's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare carried unanimously. Thanks, Councillor Miles. And that is carried unanimously. The next matter is single-use plastic bags. It's moved Councillor Brown and seconded Councillor Schreiber. Councillor Brown has the call.
Well, this was actually called out by Councillor Vandeplayce for some reason. There's a bit of Groundhog Day on this, but I'm pleased that the staff are supporting it, calling for a report so that we can look at how we meet the 2025 targets for the national packaging targets that apparently have been established with government and community and business, but like a lot of targets, they might be passed by. I think the targets are good and they're realistic. That's 100% reusable, recyclable or compostable packaging by 2025, but 70% being recycled or composted. So it's recognising that some people will still put some of it in landfill, and that 50% of average recycled content. So packaging now has 50% recycled plastic, which I think is really important because one of the biggest problems we have is where the plastic goes to be recycled. So back into packaging is the answer. And the phase out of problematic and unnecessary single-use plastics, I would say the phase out should be by 2025 of all single-use plastic is my view. And I do think it's, Randwick has recently established this and they are running with it to actually a ban on single-use plastics. I think to say we look at how we phase it out is probably more doable. I know there's been a lot done already by staff that those cutlery we get are actually made out of soy or something that we get for our dinner. But I suppose there are still some of the big ones are like bottled water, say with Bushcare, and I would see there needing to start looking at having casks of water with paper cups, but just looking at that, how we do it. And it's not, I mean, this goes back to, rights of nature. Nature really does have, the planet, this is the plastic age. It is so atrocious. I'm sure most of you have seen, certainly with the ocean, it is just beyond belief how much plastic. I just think single-use plastic has to stop. But the key is that council lead on this, that we really do make it a priority. If we say nature has a right, they have a right not to have this stuff everywhere because it ends up in their stomachs and it kills them. So aside from the unsightliness of it, and I've said this before, what I find in soil, the plastic I find in soil when I'm gardening, it's just horrifying. And of course, the smaller it is, the more dangerous it is for creatures. So this is about us taking a lead and also starting to show what the solutions are. And it's part of I think it's also part of our branding. I don't really like using the word, but I think it's us, when we talk about that we are a council that in a World Heritage Area, that we are sustainable, that's part of our strategy. This has to be part of it. So I thank the staff for supporting it, and I hope everyone else does as well. Thank you.
Any further speakers? The seconder?
Mr. Mayor.
All right, there's one matter before us.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yes, Councillor Vandeplayce.
I pulled it out and I wanted to ask a question of the CEO.
Sorry, Councillor Vandeplayce.
CEO or relevant staff. I thought we'd already gone down this track and we'd already passed motions relating to single-use plastic bags on council land and on Crown land. Have we not?
CEO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there has been multiple motions, but I'll refer to Mr. Long, Acting Director of Cultural and Community Services, to respond.
Mr. Long.
Thank you. Through the CEO, I'm aware there has been previous motions on this in the past. It's obviously a very important community item and of community interest. So yeah, there have been multiple motions passed.
Thank you. Councillor Vandeplayce, did you wish to say anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I thought we were reinventing the wheel. That's why I asked the question. But look, and I understand where we're coming from with this motion, but I believe that the problem is a lot bigger than just single-use plastic bags. I believe the problem is at the manufacturing level. I believe the problem is with the manufacturers, and we need state and federal government legislation to change all of that. The prime example is that when you go into the local supermarket and you buy a tube of toothpaste, which is in a cardboard box, that comes in a carton of a dozen, shrunk up with plastic, then it sits in another box, and that sits on a pallet, and then that goes through the thing. It's the same with plastic bottles. It's the same with a whole lot of other problems. So I'm a firm believer is that we should be tackling this particular issue at a federal level, not a state and a state level. And what we do is only a small part. And I understand that we've got to set the example for the rest of the community. But I think it's a greater issue, and it should be handled at the federal level. So I'd really like to see us lobby the federal government to try to get rid of plastic products wholly right through the industry, in the retail industry. And that's where I'm coming from, not at a local government level. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, and those councillors sending messages they think we all can't see are wrong. Councillor Hollywood.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Brown, for bringing yet another motion forward around single-use plastic bags. I'm glad that everybody has identified that this issue seems to wheel around fairly regularly, and ultimately, we know that it's in fact regulated by the state government and by the federal government. So it's a very nice segue into a reminder about why we need a seat at the National Cabinet to say that all local governments actually want the state and Commonwealth to do more around reducing and eliminating plastics in our waste streams and in our manufactured products. But I noted that you said something, the councillor said something about, that we need to lead. We need to lead. Now, the thing is that we need to think about how we lead. And the challenge is that part of our leadership is in fact advocacy that we've already done. And that in fact, the state government is taking an initiative, as is outlined in the officer's report, to look at how we can eliminate the use of single-use plastics. Now, the challenge that we've got, and I think that we shouldn't close our eyes to this, is that single-use plastics has actually gone up in the last 5 months with COVID-19. And in fact, now we've got a big waste issue in relation to disposable masks. And in fact, the run on Chinese food containers, or disposable takeaway containers, means that in fact there's not enough of them to go round because everybody is using them. So, and also we're back to using single-use coffee cups. So, I do think that we can receive a report. The officers have said that that's doable, but I also think we need to be realistic. And we need to be realistic for the community's sake, to explain where the decision making actually lies and where the power really lies to drive this change. And the power actually lies at the seat and hands of the state government and the federal government. And that's absolutely why we should have a seat at the National Cabinet table. But I do think we need to think about how much time we're spending bringing these motions forward again and again and again when we know what the real solution is about.
Thank you, Councillor Hollywood. Anyone else wish to speak? Because we have given Councillor Brown the dreaded right of reply. I know she'll ruthlessly deploy it. She's grinning. As soon as Councillor Van der Klee spoke, I knew what he'd done. He played into your hands, Councillor Brown.
I was going to warn him.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not speaking against the native motion.
No, but Councillor Hollywood did.
No, I didn't.
I wasn't.
Well, actually, Councillors Hollywood and Van der Klee, it's not your call. I deem that you both did.
No, we did.
Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Van der Klee, you're out of order, and I'll throw you out of this meeting if you continue with that rudeness. I've made a call. Anyone else wish to speak? All right, Councillor Brown, have at them.
Thank you. First of all, I'll say, believe it or not, we don't actually have a motion or a policy that specifically either bans plastic. We have good intention, but we have nothing precisely on this. We have had a lot of motions about using recycled plastics, various things, advocacy. Councillor Hollywood is correct, but this particular issue of our own practices, we still haven't nailed it. And so I go back to it. I mean, I agree. I absolutely agree that there needs to be state and federal action, and that's ultimately has to be done. But leadership does come by what you do, not just what you say. And it's in the same way that I at home am obsessive about trying not to use single-use plastics. I could decide that I'm just one person and it's pointless. Or I can think, no, every one of us that do it, we're helping to change the markets when we do that. When we go and look for a supplier who's going to give us something compostable, we are helping, we're helping businesses, and we're helping the businesses that are producing not plastic. So I actually think our actions do still matter, because as well as government, businesses respond. Already the markets have changed so that there are compostable products. And I know there's a nightmare around some of them, because you discover that some of them have plastic in it as well. And that's part of the hard work, is trying to identify what is it, what doesn't have some sort of plastic content in it anyway. So that's also why the report is good, because it's getting that information. I think a lot of people struggle with really even knowing what they can use. So we are helping others too by doing it. By people, when they come and they participate in any way in a council activity or event, and they see what we do, we're also helping to teach. So I think all of that is worth doing, you know, is worthwhile anyway. But I certainly, it's not about not advocating strongly, as Councillor Hollywood and Councillor Van der Kay has said. And I would encourage Councillor Van der Kay to bring his own notice of motion about just that, and I will vote for it. Thank you.
One matter before us again, and Councillor Hall, I think you should cease sending those messages, because everyone can see them. Thank you. All right, one matter before us. All those in favour? I'll call it. Is everyone in favour? No, everyone's in favour. It's unanimous. All right, I'll call it unanimous. Thank you. All right, next matter is matters of urgency. We've moved to that now. The first matter of urgency stands in the name of Councillor Brown regarding free laundry and shower services. It's seconded Councillor Christie, and I do call the matter urgent. Councillor Brown, do you wish to speak to it?
I've sort of put in my notice to you all why it was important. And I think we all know this, that COVID's had really a devastating impact on, you know, some sections of our community more than others. And actually people who are homeless people or living on the edge have really been pushed further out. And most of us would take for granted being able to have, you know, clean ourselves whenever we want to. And for people, homeless people, that's become really difficult. At the moment, the council did help 3 months ago, and I thank the staff for having that bit of residue in their budget to help Junction 142, where they have got a great shower and laundry facility, but their fundraising opportunities through their markets and their op shop have been severely limited. So, and now with that service, they have to clean the shower every time someone uses it. They have to deep clean it, the floors, everything, you know, everything has to be, and then all new products and freshly laundered towels, of course, all of that has to be provided. So there's like a 20-minute or half an hour between one person and another having a shower. And you can't be doing that at volunteer level. It has to be done with really strict controls now, you know, a COVID safe plan and so on. So Junction 142 have done that, and they've had council helping them, and they've had the Uniting Church, who are the sort of landlord, so to speak, you know, approving it as well. And so it's worked very well, and I gave you the numbers on it. And they're sort of 3 to 9 people a day will be having a shower, and then there's a laundry service as well. And, you know, before this, actually our aquatic centre was being used by some people for both laundering and showering and, you know, cleaning their clothes, and that's obviously presents problems as well. some of the case studies they told me about were like women living in cars with children and so on. So this is just, it's not that council, we shouldn't be having to, this is again, certainly cost shifting, but I think just for another 3 months, and we work really consciously on how we're going to help this service be resourced, because I think they're never going to be able to go, there's always going to now have to be that deep cleaning. They're never going back to cleaning at the end of the day. That sort of, things have changed so much. COVID's not going away for a long time, and this need is not going to go away either. It really makes a huge difference to people, even if they once a week can have a shower and launder their clothes. So as I said, it's for 3 months. They only open 3 days a week, but people know when those 3 days are, from 10 till 4, I think. And it's just, at the moment, it's just critical. So that's why I put it up. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Christie is second. Do you wish to speak?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll just be brief regarding this motion, and I wholeheartedly support Councillor Brown's intention behind this motion. For the last 3 months, it wasn't just Junction 142 who received funding to council to support their services. Council also donated to the Blue Mountains Women's Health and Resource Centre and the Mountains Youth Services team to assist in helping people at risk of homelessness or who are currently being affected through homelessness, as well as with the Women's Resource Centre providing additional funds to help women who are escaping domestic violence. And I agree with this motion of providing an additional 3 months of funding, and it's I think the initial round of funding came from the hard work of Vicky Edmonds and her team in response to a notice of motion of mine from September last year, which created the report, which resulted in the report in March, which allowed for this funding to occur. So I just want to thank Vicky and her team for this efforts, and looking forward to her good work continuing with Junction 142 and other vital community organisations within the Blue Mountains.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Christie. Thank you, Councillor Brown. I take it no one's against this. I'll put it, all those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Matter of urgency regarding footpaths and a near miss to a parent and child in Yellow Rock. I declare the matter as urgent. It's seconded Councillor Fell. Councillor Fernanda has the floor.
Thank you. I'm just going to be really quick. It's self-explanatory. At the beginning of August, once again, when there are no footpaths and people are forced to walk on the road, and people with mobility issues or prams, they're more susceptible to having near misses. That occurred on the 3rd of August, where a parent was pushing a pram, a car came around the corner and nearly wiped them out. So hence I would like to call upon just a report and a briefing on the possibility of making it a priority to have footpaths in Yellow Rock. Thank you.
Yep. Is the seconder wish to speak, or do you concur?
I concur. Yeah.
Thank you. I take it there's no one against this. Councillor Hollywood?
I'm not against it.
Good.
I thank Councillor Fernanda for bringing it forward, and wanted to echo that this is a Blue Mountain City Council issue across the mountains, and I just wanted to highlight that I have also drafted one of the motions to take to Local Government New South Wales Conference is actually about funding as part of economic COVID-19 economic stimulus, that we receive funding to be able to build either more footpaths or make roads more accessible, but also looking at the speed limits is a secondary motion. So they're complementary motions. So it'll be interesting to see how those go on the floor of conference. But I do actually think that the state and Commonwealth government should be thinking about how we improve pedestrian safety across the Blue Mountains and in other local government areas as well.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Hollywood. The Councillor Fernanda's motion was far more specific than that, but I didn't call you to order. Thank you for that contribution. Anyone against this? It's one matter before us. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Katoomba Airfield, Councillor Brown, is it seconded?
Councillor Schreiber.
Seconded.
Yes.
Councillor Schreiber, I declare it's urgent.
This, I'm sorry you got it late. I only just prepared it. It's really changing nothing. It was just confirming the position we've already confirmed about the airfield, which is that we believe it should go back into the national park and it should be maintained as an emergency airfield, and that we don't support the lease application. So we're putting a submission on that, supporting the community's opposition to it having a commercial helicopter lease. And what's happened, and I just put it there briefly, so that it was rejected, and then the applicants objected to the process, and then there was a review, and the review found that they should have, as well as all the submissions, they should have also fully noted all the verbal submissions they got at the forums. I went to at least one of those, which I remember very clearly, and they were actually explaining the process for making submissions. So it's a bit strange for me, I think, to say that. And also nearly everyone there was like 90%, 95% were against it anyway. So recording their views would have doubled the opposition. But nevertheless, for some reason, that's been enough for them to say that the applicants can put in further information and they will reevaluate the rejection. I have to say, I find this really strange. Doesn't quite stack up for me. But anyway, I've been asked, the community have really just want us to confirm, which it stands anyway, that our position is the same as it was when we made a submission before, that we don't support the helicopter commercial license that's been applied, lease that's been applied for, and we maintain our long-standing position that the airfield should be incorporated into the national park.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Schreiber, do you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Is there any opposition?
Yes, I'll be voting against, Mr. Mayor. Miles.
Okay, I'll record you as a vote against.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to be so recorded? Councillor Christie, you as well, against?
Yeah.
All right, I'll put the matter. All those in favour? With Councillors Christie and Miles against, declare it carried. Councillors, that is all the business that we have to deal with tonight. CEO, I don't think you've snuck in any confidential items or anything like that to surprise us with, have you?
No, Mr. Mayor, that's it, I think. I think we've finished the agenda.
All right. Councillors, thank you for your attendance tonight. Let us go off into the evening and remember
Thelma and Annie.
The passing of Thelma and Annie, and reflect upon them as we go into the evening. Thank you all very much for your time tonight. I wish you all good night.
Thank you.
Good night all.
Night. Good night all.
Night, everyone.
Yeah, good night all.
Bye.
Thanks, Toby. We can end.
Thanks, Storm.
Yeah, well, Storm.
No.